Alright, so as you, some of you may know that follow my channel, I'll be giving away 5 easy-digis, which is an interface to go between your radio and computer to knock out some of the AC hum on your signal, just kind of balance things out. So since I am doing that, I am doing a pretty much project build. So we're going to do a little video here on putting things together, and we're going to do it step by step. If you're wondering what this is my makeshift counterweight for my, my holder here. So you're going to need a few things. You will need a soldering iron. I'm using a $6 soldering iron from Harbor Freight. You'll need, of course, the easy-digi kit. Some wire cutters would be good. Some pliers to kind of straighten the leads out. And a brush to kind of clean the soldering iron off. If you have the resin, that's good too. There's a few things you can use. And a wet sponge or something to kind of wipe the tip off if it gets a little too dirty. So we're going to go step by step on the paper you receive in the mail with the easy-digi on the installation, and we'll get these parts soldered on. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you want to do is just go ahead and plug that soldering iron in so it can get nice and hot. So like I said, I am using the Harbor Freight $6 soldering iron, so nothing really special there, but it will do the trick. So that's getting hot. Let's take a look at the board here. So obviously the pieces are going to go in through the top, and we're going to take those to the holes at the bottom and bend the leads. And the first two we're going to be doing, like I said, we're going right off the list here. You'll see these two diode icons here. And you'll notice that the top part has a cap on it. So that means pretty much the polarity matters here. And if you take a look at a diode that we're going to be soldering here, see if I can get the camera to focus. You'll see that it's got a black marking at the top. And we pretty much just need to make sure once we solder this onto the board that it lines up with the markings here that you see on the board. So I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing I'm going to do is just take that pair of pliers and bend the leads in. So that way it's nice and neat. We're going to do this with both the diodes. Right like that right there. And we're going to do it to the other one. And I like to just straighten these legs up just to have it nice and neat. Make my life a little easier here. And once you have those straightened up, you're going to take the board. We're just going to insert those right on the markers. Make sure that it aligns just like that. You want the top cap there with the diagram on the board. So let's go ahead and get the other one in there. Stop shaking a little bit here. Okay. So you'll see those diodes in there just like that. And now we're going to flip the board around, and you want to bend these legs over, right? So that way they stay in place while we solder them. So you can see the leads nice and bent, right? Nice and flush against the board. And so this guy is ready to solder. So as you can see, I'm using a helping hands, and I put some tape over the clamp so they wouldn't scratch the board. So I'm going to go ahead and put the board up on my clamps here. And you don't have to have one of these, but they do come in handy. We're about ready to begin soldering, and unfortunately it's a little hard to get the camera to set up the perfect way while I solder. But basically, the first thing we're going to do is tin the soldering iron. So we're just going to take a little solder, and we're going to touch it to the tip of the soldering iron here just to see if everything's hot enough, and get a little bit of just get a little bit of solder. And once we see it's hot enough, I'm going to take the solder that came with the little easy-digi here, and I'm going to cut off some of it. It's about right here. And the trick here is you're going to touch the soldering iron to the small pin, this round pin that goes around the solder joint you're trying to do, right? And you're going to get it a little bit hot. and then you're going to start wicking the solder in, usually through the other side, touch it to the pin. And if you did it right, the pin's going to be hot enough, the solder's going to melt, and it's just going to form a nice little bond there. So let's see what we can do. All right. So we've got those soldered on. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So what you're looking for is a nice shiny solder joint, right? And you want it to make sure that it's making contact with the pad, right? You want a good contact. And you want to make sure that the underside's not loose somehow, so maybe try to wiggle them around a little bit. But once that looks good, we're just going to bend these leads up some, and we're going to clip them off. Pretty much right like that, but I can't do this on camera at the same time. So yeah, you just want to clip it as close to the solder joint as you can. So next you're going to find the R2 and R3 resistors, which are the 2.2K ohm resistors. And you're going to get 3 resistors here that look very similar, but you're going to notice that 2 of them have 2 black stripes, right? So the ones with the 2 black stripes, if you can see, are the ones that we're going to do in R2 and R3. And I have messed one of these up before and put the wrong one in, so just make sure you get the ones with 2 black stripes, and those are going to go into the R2 and R3 ports here. Said it doesn't matter the polarity, so let's go ahead and just get these into a decent shape with my shaky self. And those are going to go into the board pretty much the same way. So we're just going to find the R2 and R3 slots. Put that one right there, right like that. Put R3 in there. And before I solder this, I'm going to double check just to be sure. Make sure they are the same. Sorry, these are 1 black stripe, not 2 black stripes. The 2 black stripe is the other resistor that we're going to be using for the R1 slot. So just make sure you have the ones with the 1 black stripe on the R2 and R3. So same thing, you're just going to take the back and just bend them down, bend them over. Just get them out of the way of the other pins. So I've got mine bent down just like that right there. And it looks like they are ready to solder. So let's move on over there. Alright, so we're going to take what's left of our wire here. Take our soldering iron. Pretty much same deal as before. I don't know how to do anything with these shaky hands. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that. This guy looks like I could maybe use some more from this angle, but on my side it looks fine. So once those are done, we're going to clip the leads just as we did before here. If there's a little bit of lead left over, it's not a huge deal. As long as it isn't touching anything else, you are usually good to go. Next we have the R1 resistor, which is the one with 2 black stripes. As you can see here. And it's going to go into the R1 resistor window. So we got our leads bent back. Sometimes it's a good idea, if it is going to run into a different pin, just to move the lead over. You don't want to move them too much, but you also don't want to solder the leads onto another pin. So I've moved them over a lot like that, and we're going to go ahead and get this one soldered on. Alright, so now I'm going to try this camera angle and see if it will allow me to still get in and do what I need to do, but allow people to see what I'm doing. It's going to be a little bit more difficult this time. can probably see how bad I'm shaking as well. So there is a good contact. And we'll get those clipped off. This is the other ones. So next we are going to be doing the D3 diode, as you'll see down here at the very bottom of the board. And the D3 diode looks a little different than the other two, but it does have a different color there at the top, as you can maybe see on camera. Barely. On the right side there's a little gray tip, and that's what signifies the polarity and relates to the difference on the board there. So we're going to bend this guy into shape. So once it's in there, of course, we're going to bend the legs back. And let's go ahead and get this soldered on. Beautiful. Careful not to burn your wire with the soldering iron. And I'm really satisfied with that. Those leads turned out really well. So I'm going to go ahead and snap them off. So the next piece we have is going to be the optocoupler. Okay, so this is an important part. You probably can't see on the camera, but on one corner of this, which is this top right corner for me here, there's a small circular indentation. There it is. And that needs to be aligned with the square hole on your circuit board. So here, you'll notice at the bottom left there's a square pin. So I need to make sure that I align that hole with that pin there. Once you get it in there, this thing's a little bit trickier because you can't just bend the pins. So just make sure it stays in there while you're soldering. And the important part is make sure that you align that hole with the square pin on the board. Now this one's pretty much the same as before, but you'll notice the pins are pretty close together, so you want to be careful when you solder this not to bridge a soldering point. If you do, it's not the end of the world. You can just solder it off, but it is something to be conscious of while you're doing this. So we're going to go ahead and move this over here so it's in my glass a little better. Maybe for you all too. It's not happening. Sorry folks. That's why I did that up close one. But it looks like I'm also going to have to grasp the end of this board. We might need some more solder before we get done with this joint. We are running a little bit low. Depends on how efficient we are. Pretty satisfied. Pretty satisfied with that. Let's move my parts over. I'm going to show you all what is going on here and inspect the board myself. So it's these 6 pins here. Just want to make sure everything's got contact. Make sure nothing's touching the other pin, and you should be good to go. And so on the board, let's see here. We have C1 over here and C2 over here. The polarization of capacitors doesn't matter, so it doesn't matter which way you put these guys in. But what you do want to make sure of is that you push them in, but you don't want them flush to the board because you risk damaging the capacitor. So you want to leave a little bit of leg room, but other than that, it's pretty simple. These are maybe a little bit uneven, but it'll be okay for our purposes. So what I'm going to actually do is take one of these legs and bend it around so it holds on both sides. This one needs a little bit of help. So what I'm going to do is take my pliers And I'm gonna just kind of gently make that bottom wire flush to the board. That way we stay in place while we're doing our soldering. Again, be careful not to set the soldering iron down in a stupid place. And I'm going to wiggle these around, see if they move. They're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and clip the ends off. Just going to bend those wires up. Orientate the wires. And we're just going to clip those leads off. So last but not least, we have the transformers, and that goes in these two slots here. So if you look at the board here, there's actually 4 pins on each side for the transformer, but there's only 4 legs. But if you follow the diagram here, if you follow the traces, you can see that they both end up in the same holes on both sides. So really, what you would aim to do here is just plug in the transformer on the 2 inner posts. And you might have to bend the leads around to get it to fit the correct way. Once it's in there, the important part is that it sits flush against the board. Right like this right here. So I'm going to go ahead and take those leads and then bend them back. Right like that right there. Alright, so I had to have a little break for dinner, but we're coming back. I've actually just went ahead and attached both transformers on. They're both snug, and I've bent the wires in a way that will kind of make it easy for me to be able to solder them without causing too much mayhem. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this on and go ahead and get this thing soldered up here. My finger's a little close to the soldering iron, making me a little bit burning some tape. Alright, let's finish strong here. By soldering the wrong pin. That's alright. So it's looking good. Get these leads clipped off here. Alright, so I'm just finishing up here, and I'm looking at the chip, making sure I didn't do anything stupid. But everything looks okay. Said it's not the prettiest job, but I think this will work. And I've decided to break this video up into 2 parts because that was quite lengthy getting the soldering done. So in this video, we've actually done the soldering. We had the board complete. And for this next part, what we're going to do is take some more materials like shielded wire from our radio to the easy-digi and to the computer, a project box, and I'm going to show you how to actually wrap this up and finish this project to get this thing actually interfaced to the computer. But we have assembled all the parts that come with the package, so that's step 1, and it doesn't look too bad. I think it's going to do exactly what we need it to do. So tune into the video this Friday, and we're actually going to have the assembly where we actually set everything up and wire it through. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and I hope this helps somebody out that had some questions, and I'll wrap it up there. 73 to you.